Hello, so here we are today to look at the days of Blackthorn. Today the sun, along its ecliptic journey through the year, passes from the days of Broom into the days of Blackthorn, and that's today, Sunday, 25th of August 2024. So I'm just going to bring a PowerPoint presentation up. Quite a lot of information today. That's going to lead on to talking about Ceridwen, Ceridwen's cauldron lore. Okay, oops. Right then, so sorry about that. It always takes me a minute, frustrating minute to bring up the PowerPoint presentation. So just very quickly, this is our third year. The first year was 2022. So if you just want to learn basic lore about the Blackthorn, we've already done a video on it. So you want to look for Blackthorn 2022. And last year we looked at herbal medicine throughout the year. So if you're interested in the herbal medicine of Blackthorn, you want to search for Blackthorn 2023. This year, we're specifically looking at which Celtic gods and goddesses can correspond with each tree. So that's the main focus of this presentation, if you like. So the days of Blackthorn, to help us correspond a deity to the Blackthorn, you can see here near the top of the screen, specifically, Blackthorn goes from the 3rd degree of Virgo to the 21st degree of Virgo. It's the only tree in the Ogham Grove that is completely Virgo, and that's really quite important. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is ancient Virgo star lore of the mother goddess of the mystery traditions. After Blackthorn, we go into the days of Elder, and Elder takes us to the autumn equinox. But looking at classical star lore, zodiac lore, and the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, you can see here roughly at 11 o'clock that Blackthorn corresponds with Virgo, and for the Greeks and the Romans, that was the goddess Ceres or Ceres and the goddess Demeter. And specifically, the Virgo goddess was the cereal goddess, and is represented in the heavens by the only female sign of the zodiac holding an ear of wheat or a sheaf of wheat is Virgo, the maiden. And the star lore then of that Virgo cereal goddess is she's the main divine matriarch overseeing ancient mystery traditions that always began around this time of year between Leo and Virgo with the harvest festivals and the cereal festivals. So in the Ogham Grove, just by lucky circumstance, this isn't my contrivance, the sequence of trees is that which is given in the Book of Ballymote in 1390 AD. And what you end up getting is this rather lovely triple goddess, triple expression of Virgo. The maiden aspect is Broom, who is mostly Leo the lion. She's 15 degrees Leo, mostly lion, and just 3 degrees of Virgo. So she kind of has a foot on Virgo, but she's mostly Leo. And then you have Blackthorn herself, which is completely Virgo. And then Elder is half Virgo, half Libra. And that space between Virgo and Libra is the autumn equinox. So she's illustrated here holding the scales of balance, the scales of Libra. But our focus today then is the middle figure. and gonna go off on quite a meandering tour of mother goddess things that lead to Ceridwen and the mysteries of Ceridwen, and we'll come back to Virgo, the mother goddess. Quickly, there's one thing that I want to ram home with everybody, and that's the W shape on the chest of the lady in the middle. So this W shape is very deliberate, and it represents a constellation that we call today Cassiopeia. And sometimes it can represent a throne. Talked about that in another video, but for the Celts primarily, unashamedly, it represented the breasts of the mother goddess. And I'll give some explanation of that as we go through, and I'm just going to refer to them affectionately as the heavenly boobies, but of the mother goddess. But secondary constellations with her are Virgo, which is represented as the sheaf of wheat. Virgo is always holding a sheaf of wheat or grain of wheat, ear of wheat. The black crow is a constellation called Corvus the crow, or it can be seen as a raven as well. Corvus can be crow or raven. And it's just up next to the heavenly cauldron, Crater, the wine mixing cup. Now, we looked at Crater, the wine mixing cup in the previous session with the broom maiden. So now we're looking at the Blackthorn mother, and in 2.5 weeks' time, we'll be looking at the grandmother elder. So today then, primarily looking at Virgo star law and what that leads us to. So here's a lovely image. I hope you can see it clearly. For me, it's cropped by some icons. But three goddesses, a triple goddess is a big thing with the Celts. Bridget is threefold, Morrigan is threefold. There were three Guineveres and so on. And this is a more Roman-esque, Romano-Celtic version. And in Bath, England, a more primitive version. These are just known as the Three Mothers, and they were found in Bath near Bristol, North Somerset. So this triple aspect of the goddess in modern paganism, maiden, mother, crone, is a thing, though in ancient Celtic things, the pattern of maiden, mother, grandmother isn't really there. It's just threefold goddess, three women in their prime. So it doesn't emphasize the three ages of womanhood as much. Now, I've already done a video. It's the most popular video on the Owen Grove YouTube channel. It's had over 5,000 views now. The Great Mother Goddess of the Celts. And that goes into deeper detail, some of the things I'm going to be bringing up in this presentation. And specifically, it's understanding the importance of the constellation of the heavenly boobies. Now, I'll give you time to look at it, and it relates to Blackthorn and Virgo specifically for this reason. If you look at the star map on the left, you've got Virgo at the bottom, and the bright circle in the middle is representing the pole star, and you've got Pisces at the top. Virgo and Pisces are directly opposite each other. Now, in the Pisces section, above the center circle, you've got the W shape. The way we're looking at it, it looks like a capital letter M for Mary. But that's the heavenly boobies from the Celtic perspective, and also suggestive in Egyptian things too, which I'll show you. So you can see how the heavenly breasts are part of this polarity pattern between Virgo and Pisces. That's the opposite polarity thing. They're all on that alignment. And that gives you the figure on the right, which is the Melusine figure from French medieval occultism. It's the maiden, Virgo, with the fish's tail, Pisces. So this celestial maiden or heavenly maiden, or the night sky was often seen as an ocean of stars or the lake. So in Arthurian mythology, she can also be the lady of the lake, this heavenly mermaid in the night sky. That's part Virgo, part Pisces. And she was the figurehead for the Piscean age, which is now coming to an end. But for the last 2,500 years, this Virgo Pisces icon represented the age of Pisces. We're now shifting into the age of Aquarius, which is Aquarius opposite Leo. So we're having a transition incarnation at the moment. But you can see at the bottom how Virgo is with Corvus the crow and Crater the cauldron. Here's the stars turned sideways. So the pale blue streak arching through the image is the Milky Way. And if you look towards the middle, you can see the capital letter M, or the heavenly boobies, the breasts of the mother goddess. She's actually situated in the center of the Milky Way between the summer stars on the left and the winter stars on the right. It's not so important. I just wanted you to see how she holds the center of the Milky Way between the summer stars and winter stars. And that's what's important. And to the left, along the Milky Way, you'll see the bright star of Cygnus the Swan. And then there's a split in the Milky Way, like the Milky Way has divided into a pair of legs. And this division in the Milky Way is known as the dark rift. And Cygnus the Swan is kind of flying out of the dark rift. And really the dark rift is the yoni of the Milky Way mother goddess too, shown specifically in Egyptian artwork. So here you've got the star goddess of Egypt, Nut, N-U-T. Her breasts are there, and the figure is also raising their hands towards the yoni. It's the same as this. It's the heavenly boobies and the place between the legs of the star goddess. Relevant then to lots of other goddesses at birth. So this is the heavenly mother, and the sacred swan being part of that psychopomp journey. But mainly just emphasizing the divine feminine and the heavenly boobies. So in Ireland, it's expressed in the landscape. There's a pair of famous hills in Ireland, and they've both got a little stone shrine on top. So they've got nipples. It's hard to see in the photo, but these are known as the Paps of Anu. So you can Google that for yourself. The Paps of Anu are two hills in County Kerry, Southern Ireland, and they represent the breasts of the mother goddess. So you've literally got the heavenly boobies of the great mother in the landscape itself, the Paps of Anu. Anu is a version of Danu, the mother goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And in Wales, the mother goddess is Don, D-O-N. But Don, Danu, Paps of Anu, it's the same mother goddess. So the constellation of Cassiopeia to the northern Welsh, the heavenly boobies, was known as Llys Don, the court of the mother goddess Don. So it's that emphasis of the divine mother by her breasts, if you like. Now, my friend Laura Murphy put a story together about the rising of Danu, and I did this little bit of artwork for her, which shows the Paps of Anu and the constellation of Cassiopeia. And you can listen to that story for free online. There's a website called Knotwork Storytelling. There's loads and loads of stories that you can listen to for free there. It's run by a lady called Marissa Gowdy, And if you look for Danu, Rise of the Mother, you can hear a conversation between Laura and Marissa, and then Laura tells her story of the rising of the mother goddess Danu, and she invokes the Paps of Anu in the story. So it's a good thing to listen to when you've got a quiet evening and you want to listen to some old Irish folklore mythology. So here's the Milky Way now going vertical. And it's another aspect that I want to point out, and I've already done it in the Great Mother Goddess of the Celts video that you can look at. So Cassiopeia is on the right, on the pale streak of blue. The pale streak of blue is the Milky Way. Now, next to her, the very central stars, they're not on the Milky Way, the central stars. The Milky Way goes past the center point, if you like. So Polaris of the Little Bear, Ursa Minor, is the pole star at the moment. But on a kind of weak star night, it's hard to see Polaris. The main constellation you see in the sky opposite the heavenly boobies is Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And here's a really important insight. Remembered in American star lore is that we, in Europe, in England, we call Ursa Major the Great Bear, but a lot of Americans call it the Big Dipper. And that's really quite crucial because the dipper is the ladle. The ladle is the spoon that does the stirring of the night sky. It stirs the stars around. So the stars seem to rotate around every night around the pole star. Really, it's planet Earth spinning on its axis, but it creates the visual illusion that the stars are being stirred by a great big ladle, the Big Dipper. And what you have then is at the central area of the night sky is you've got the heavenly mother goddess with her boobies and her big ladle, and the night sky is being stirred, or the goddess is stirring her cauldron. And this is relevant to Ceridwen's cauldron, of course, and relevant to Blackthorn and the days of Virgo. So we'll come to Ceridwen shortly. Here's an icon from Roman Britain, Gloucester, which is on the River Severn. And it depicts on the right-hand side the goddess Rosmerta. And Rosmerta is usually holding a big spoon or ladle, and she has a barrel or a bucket. So she's the goddess of the stirring of the big spoon, if you like, so that's there in quite a few icons of Rosmerta. At Gloucester, her companion is Mercury. He's got his caduceus and a cockerel, but really that would be Lugus or Lu. So it's thought that Rosmerta and Mercury Lugus are the tribal parents of the tribe that lived in the Gloucestershire area before the Romans invaded. Those kind of ideas. But mainly I was just pointing out that a goddess with a big spoon and a bucket or a cauldron is pretty old. This is like 4th century Romano-Celtic. The thing with Ceridwen's cauldron is the story, frustratingly, was not written down until the 16th century. So that's like 1,200 years after this depiction of a goddess with a big spoon and a cauldron. But the poets and bards of Wales had their own story. So we're going to look at that now, and I'm going to talk us through it a little bit. So it's written down in the 16th century. Ceridwen is mentioned in passing in some medieval poems, but there's no great information about her. The main bulk of information about Ceridwen comes from this 16th century story, which is known in English as the Hanes Taliesin. Hanes is spelled Hanes. So you can Google Hanes Taliesin and you can find out everything there is to know about it. But it's the story of a young lad called Gwion Bach, who has to stir a cauldron for Ceridwen. And then eventually, after lots of magical events, he becomes Taliesin, the chief of bards. So it's a really important story, even though it's rather late 16th century. Doesn't mean it's that recent. It's just that things don't get written down until they get written down. So this poster is available online. It is also in the files section of the Ogham Grove Facebook group. So you can go there and download a free copy. So I'm going to zoom in to different parts of this poster. Oops. So I'm not going to tell the whole story. I'm going to pick out important parts of it. First of all, Ceridwen is trying to make a magical potion of inspiration for her son. Her son's called Morvran, which means the Great Crow. And he's ugly and deformed, and she's trying to give him the best opportunity she can in life. So to make up for his ugliness, she's trying to make him as inspired and as intelligent and knowledgeable as possible. So she's brewing her cauldron of inspiration. Now, here's the first thing. You have to pay attention to stories. So it specifically says that the cauldron has to be stirred for a year and a day. Now, the reason it says year and a day is because, of course, a year is 365 and a quarter days. So you have to do it for 366 days to make a whole year. So the old poetic way of saying more than 365 days and a quarter is it had to be stirred for a year and a day. So basically it's telling you that this story is a year wheel story. It's a story about the cycle of a year. Now, in the story, remember it's 16th century, it says that Ceridwen, and this is a direct quote, according to the books of the astronomers, gathered herbs each day for a year and a day as the cauldron was stirred. So it's also saying it's a year wheel, and she is doing her magic according to the books of the astronomers. That is, it's a star law year wheel story. So that's there, you know, it couldn't be more specific in the first few paragraphs. It's explaining that. So she has a young lad called Gwion Bach stirring the cauldron for a whole year until she can achieve 3 magical drops of inspiration, which are for her son. So this is illustrated in the middle. Now, this was playing on my brain for a long time, and I kept thinking about the next bit of the story, and I had a eureka moment. But now I would explain it different, and it's simple too, is that there's a famous animal shape-shifting chase, which we're going to look at. And then Ceridwen consumes, she swallows the boy, Gwion Bach, and he's inside her for 9 months. It says that specifically in the story, that he's inside her for 9 months, and then she gives birth to him on May Eve. May Eve is another way of saying Beltane. So then you've had the story saying it's a year and a day, according to the books of the astrologers, and you know that the boy is born at Beltane, so therefore he was swallowed 9 months previously. And 9 months previous to Beltane is Lunacy. So the descent into the darkness of the womb, the descent into the belly of the mother goddess, happens after Lunacy with the the Leo-Virgo cusp, which is what the animal shape-shifting story then takes us to. So, in the poster, 3 drops of inspiration go onto the fingers of Gwion Bach, and it burns his fingers. He puts them in his mouth, and he realizes in a flash that he's got all of the inspiration and all of the knowledge that was meant for Ceridwen's ugly son, Morvran, the Great Crow. And he realizes instantly that she's going to be raging mad and angry with him for stealing the magic that was intended for her son. And she sees him, and he turns himself into a hare, and she turns herself into a hound and chases him. This is the beginning of what a lot of people see as a shamanic animal shape-shifting story. And it can be played out that way, but it's also specific constellations in the night sky. So in the portion of the night sky where the 3 drops of inspiration are, Orion's belt, you have Canis Major, the great hound, and you have Lepus, the hare. So the hound and the hare are in the same portion of sky. And so the animal shape-shifting chase begins, and they run around the night sky. As hound and hare, they eventually come to the next area of the night sky. Gwion Bach changes himself from a hare into a fish. He comes to a river and changes himself into a fish. Now, there's a constellation called Eridanus, the river, next to the constellation of Pisces, the fish. Ceridwen in the story turns herself from a hound into an otter. Now, there isn't a constellation of an otter, but right close to the river and the fish is Cetus, the whale. So it's a big sea monster that's going to chase the fish. So, you know, presumably the Welsh bards have made it a bit more organic to freshwater fish, river, so an otter chasing the fish, whatever the case may be. After the otter chasing the fish, the next part of the night sky, Gwion Bach changes himself from a fish into a bird. It doesn't say what bird, it just says a bird. And Ceridwen turns herself from an otter into a hawk and chases him. This portion of the sky is where the 3 birds are, the 3 birds of Rhiannon, the constellations of Cygnus the swan, Aquila the eagle, are in that portion of the sky that would correspond with Gwion Bach and Ceridwen turning into a bird and a hawk. So they've actually gone through the 3 elements as well. As hound and hare, they're land animals. Then they become fish and otter, water animals. And then they're in the sky as a pair of birds. So they're in the air. So that the last element then isn't land, water, or air, it's fire. And fire is the heat inside the body, which is usually related to food. So, as a bird trying to fly away from Ceridwen, Gwion Bach sees a granary floor. And the granary floor corresponds here with the portion of the zodiac, which is Virgo, the cereal goddess. And he lands on the granary floor and decides to turn himself into a single grain of wheat to hide from her. And she lands and turns herself into a black hen. And here in the night sky, you have Virgo holding her ear of wheat, and there's a bright star called Spica, which is the grain on the ear of wheat. And next to Virgo is Corvus the crow, a black bird. So you've got the Virgo cereal goddess, the emphasis of a grain of wheat, and a black hen in the same portion of sky. So this is also the Lunacer moment. It's also the cusp between Leo and Virgo. And so the Virgo cereal goddess, as a black hen, consumes Gwion Bach as a grain of wheat. And then as a grain of wheat, he gestates inside her for 9 months. So here in the red circle, you can see it arching round. Gwion was 9 months in the womb. After the 9 months, so the stirring goes one way and then the other way. So it begins in the bottom right-hand corner and goes anti-clockwise through the animal shape-shifting. And then when she eats him, the 9 months go clockwise through the year from Lunacy to Beltane, and then she gives birth to him. And he is so beautiful that she wanted to destroy him, but he's so beautiful she can't destroy him, but she doesn't want him either, so the story says. So she wraps him up and puts him in a leather or wicker basket, and she puts him on a river like Moses in a basket and just lets him float down river. So then we're back, you can see on the right-hand side, we're back to Eridanus, the river, flowing to Pisces, the fish. Gwion Bach, after floating down river, is found in a salmon weir. The salmon of wisdom, he's found in this salmon weir. And the person that finds him pulls the blanket away from the baby's head, and the head is radiant with knowledge and shining with Arwen and Imbus and all gnosis and all knowingness. And the person that finds him names him Taliesin. Taliesin means the radiant brow. So Gwion Bach was an ordinary boy stirring Ceridwen's cauldron until the 3 drops of inspiration burn his hand and he puts them in his mouth. Then there's this star law animal shape-shifting pattern, and then he's consumed and then sent down the river, and then Gwion Bach is called Taliesin, the chief of bards. Ceridwen herself, her whole story comes from Lake Bala in mid-Wales, and the river where Taliesin was sent down flows out to Cardigan Bay. But Ceridwen, being a goddess or divine feminine of Lake Bala, she's also a lady of the lake, just like Virgo and Pisces, the Virgo-Pisces thing. And that's there in the Star Law story of Ceridwen and Taliesin. So very interesting. 16th century, you know, but Welsh bards, troubadours, poets have carried motifs from the ancient world forward. So here we are then, back at Blackthorn, and all that I have rambled about is there with her iconography. The W shape of the heavenly boobies is on her chest. The abundant fruits of harvest time are on her lap. The great big sheaf of wheat is there for Virgo, the cereal goddess who always holds an ear of wheat. And then there's Corvus the crow. Ceridwen's son is Morvran, the great crow. And next to the crow is the celestial cauldron. So Blackthorn, more than any other deity in Celtic mythology, corresponds best with Ceridwen and the rites of passage that led Gwion Bach to becoming Taliesin. So there's a lot there to think about. I'll shut this down. You can put your microphones on and we can talk about some of those ideas.
I'm quite interested in that, the part of the story about Taliesin's journey from Gwion, because in the Irish tradition, there was a monk in, I don't know, very, very early centuries who took down the stories from some Irish bard of his journey through the whole historic centuries of Ireland. And one time he was a deer, and then he was a fish, and then he was, and it sort of went on like that in a very, very similar way. So I'm wondering whether that might be the precursor, perhaps, a sort of seminal story which came down into the Taliesin story.
I can't prove it, but I suspect that the Welsh bards and the Irish filly, the Irish poets, had similar teaching stories.
Yeah.
And what we've got left with are echoes of those teaching stories. So like in the story of Bran and Branwen, the Welsh for the older tree is Gwion, and the Irish for the older tree is fern. So the only difference is F and GW. So GW and F are the same thing. So Gwion, the GW in Ireland would be Fionn. And Fionn, or Finn McCool, is also a story of the salmon of wisdom.
Yes.
And so Fionn and Gwion Bach are the same.
Oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? That's absolutely fascinating.
Same characters that have salmon of wisdom in their story. And I think Taliesin really isn't a name, it's more of a title.
Yeah.
The chief of bards is the Radiant Brow. So anyone who's done the rites of passage is Radiant Brow, chief of bards. But what the island and Wales has Fionn and Gwion, and they both have salmon of wisdom.
So interesting.
And also there was the stirring of the cauldron by the 9 goddesses, 9 maidens, in one of the stories, and I'm not sure if that's Taliesin's story or a very much earlier one.
So here's another reason for thinking that Taliesin is a title, is because in Welsh archives there are loads of poems credited to Taliesin, and quite honestly, some are more brilliant than others. Some are not so good, and some are incredibly brilliant. So that makes you think it's more than one poet. It's not all the same person, but it could have been a Radiant Brow, chief of bards at any given moment in time could have written that. So there is a I forget what poem it is. There is a poem credited to Taliesin where he describes the cauldron of Annwn being kept warm by the breath of 9 maidens.
That's right. That's right.
So that is related to the chief of bards, the Radiant Brow.
Yeah.
In a way, every what's the word? Every pharaoh in Egypt represented Osiris. And every goddess could be Isis, and so every chief of bards was the Radiant Brow. I think that's kind of how I see it. And I think the rites of Ceridwen are some hint that the Welsh bards were doing some sort of mystery school.
Exactly.
Training.
Yes. I'm for that.
And in the Indian tradition, they're the 9 daughters of the moon. So I wondered, I've really been rather fascinated with these 9 goddesses, 9 maidens, 9 priestesses. There's 9, I think, in Sicily, not Sicily, in the Scilly Islands. There were that controlled the winds and the weather, and up in the west coast of Scotland and various places, I think. They keep coming across them. And I thought, I wonder if that's the connection somewhere with the...
There's a story of Bridget going to Scotland with 9 sisters. As well.
Oh, right.
And off the west coast of Brittany, there's a place called Ile-de-Saône, which has 9 druidesses.
Connected with significant. Sorry.
9 is a very significant number.
What about the simple star law of the symbol of the mother goddess, the heavenly boobies, next to a big ladle in the middle of the night sky.
Yeah, that's
And the night
lovely.
sky rotates, so it's stirred. You know, who's doing the stirring?
That's
You know,
brilliant, isn't it?
yeah,
There is, I believe, I think it's in the Mayan tradition, a goddess that stirs the corn to produce the golden beings, to bring in the golden light. She's stirring and grinding, I think, not stirring, grinding the corn to produce. And I think it's in the Mayan tradition that I've read that. But I wanted to also ask you something, because we refer to her also as the Lady of the Lake.
Mhm.
And when I think of the Lady of the Lake, Yuri, I always think of the Lady of the Lake handing up the sword. Is that the same? Is that the same energy? Is this totally in another area?
no, I
The
think
sword of Excalibur.
it's all the same energy, and it's also related to all the well maiden stuff. If you think about Ceridwen's location being Lake Bala, it's a huge lake, and on a nice still night, that lake is going to reflect the stars. So it's actually a vast mirror of the night sky. You know, that
Yeah.
the star lore stories are there in the lake. And,
Yeah.
you know, hanging from the 3 drops of inspiration, Orion's belt is Orion's sword.
Ah,
Well, you know, so that's there. That was the main treasure for the summer solstice, you know. So you've got the spear of Lu corresponding with the spring equinox. You've got the sword of Nuada corresponding with summer solstice. And now, coming up to autumn equinox, you've got the cauldron. Be it Ceridwen's cauldron or the cauldron of the Dagda or the cauldron of the Noon. You know, they're all expressions of the vast cauldron.
oh, thank you.
Might there be a connection between the naming of the dog days are in August and the story of Ceridwen?
Yeah, because that corresponds roughly with these days. And
Yes.
it's you follow the 3 drops of wisdom, Orion's belt, and it points you to Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. And Sirius rising is the dog days. You know, that's the big festival for ancient Egypt.
Yeah, the time of fertility. Yeah, amazing. It's wonderful how through the world, all the different areas have their own version of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very powerful messages.
And
Yeah.
they're all seeing the night sky from slightly different latitudes and longitudes. So, you know, they have different star variations slightly.
Yeah.
So, but so long as you're north of the equator, which is pretty much all of Europe and just about North Africa, it's the same stars, you know, the Northern Hemisphere stars. For these stories, you know, Australia and New Zealand, the natives have their own southern constellations that the Celts weren't aware of, you know. So the Celtic stories are of the Northern Hemisphere.
Yuri, I don't
I
know.
wanted to say something about the, oops. Go
Amy,
ahead, Vanya.
Amy.
Oh,
Sorry, no, I've
excuse me.
spoken a lot, so you
No.
say, you speak.
I love this stuff, and the story of stirring the night sky is my favorite. You know, I noticed when you showed the picture of the Paps in Ireland, the hills, and you had Cassiopeia above it. Of course, there is that as above, so below idea. And again, it reminded me, and I've told this story probably countless times, so I won't tell it again, but when I was at Standing Rock a few years ago, and the Standing Rock Sioux medicine man, and he was a medicine man, took the press up to where all of us reporters up to where the developers, the pipeline developers, had scraped over this sacred site. And as he described it, it was reflecting what, you know, at a certain time of year, what the constellation was above it. I don't know which constellation it was. And so whenever there's this matching landscape and constellation, I think of that, you know, because it's, I think Rosemary's right. They, you know, everybody had a different way of doing the same thing. And then the second thing I wanted to say was that I noticed the Pleiades in the night sky the other night for the first time, you know, since they went away last year. And it's interesting to know that, you know, Orion will be coming around soon. He's my favorite.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah. Vanya?
Okay. No, I was just going to say, I was interested to know I've not been able to track it down, but there was something about Ceridwen's connection with the sow and the abundance of produce from there. And I wondered if you knew anything about that.
I don't have that knowledge yet. I think it's not in the Hanes Taliesin, which is the Star Law story. So there are medieval poems that refer to Ceridwen. So one of those, I guess, mentions the sow. But I don't have that information to share.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so thank you.
Other than pigs are considered animals of the underworld. You know, yeah.
Does she have a psychopomp aspect?
Ceridwen?
But I would say if you saw her as a representation of the heavenly boobies, then yes, because she's the divine feminine of the Milky Way. And the Milky Way was two things to the ancient people. The first thing is that she's a Sheila and a gig. You know, the dark rift is the birthing place, and Cygnus the swan is like the stork bringing babies into the world. But also the Milky Way is the path of the dead. It's the souls walking the Milky Way to the spirit world.
The transition.
She is there on the spirit path, you know, the great spirit path. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Wow.
Find it quite. I've noticed the maybe you know the hero's journey, and it's so representing the wheel of the year. And for me, this period is like when we're just like behind midsummer, and we're receiving all those information about ourselves when we've done the deep down thing. And with Lunasat, we're receiving our first knowledge about ourselves, and then now we're entering the second knowledge. So now for some reason it might start all over again. We're going up, but we're digesting, like with Sowen, all the knowledge, and put it in something new to make another round a year.
That's lovely.
Different. This is more esoteric in the sense of internal. Esoteric can mean inner work.
Yes.
Internal work, internal alchemy ideas. So where we are now, the Virgo Pisces polarity all relates to the lower cauldron, and Virgo governs the digestive system. So the animal shape shifting is going through different elements, and the final element is the grain of wheat and the consummation, and that's all about the internal fire. And so the star law is about Virgo, the wheat, the grain, the food that is done with alchemy in the lower cauldron, and the well-being of the middle cauldron and the upper cauldron to get radiant brow depends upon the healthy function of the lower cauldron, which is partly about your food digestion, but it's also the infinite source of your inspiration. It bubbles up from your lower
Yes,
cauldron to
yes.
your brow.
That's
sort of
why
thing.
the organs, the stuff of, it's called our second brain, right?
Yeah.
The-
So
That's
the-
great.
the well-being of each cauldron depends on the other cauldron. So all
Yes.
three, like the 7 chakras in yoga, they all
Yes.
have to be one thing,
Okay.
you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a song, Yuri, is inspired by what you've talked about. It goes, 3 drops fire in my head, 3 drops fire in my head, 3 drops fire in my head, 3 drops of inspiration. Into the cauldron, fire in my head, into the cauldron, fire in my head. It goes on in that vein, but it talks about other things.
That's
Lovely.
brilliant.
Wow.
Nice chant.
Keep
You must
going.
you must record it and put it on the Facebook group.
Okay, yeah. Nimue,
Yeah.
Brilliant,
someone called
yeah.
Nimue wrote it from down the road. She's from Stroud as well. She wrote that, but it kind of correlates with the whole
Yes.
theme
Yeah.
of the talk. Yeah.
So another perspective is like you've got your 3 cauldrons, but if you had a bird's eye view, one's in one cup's in another cup in another cup. So from a bird's eye view, it's all one cauldron.
Right.
You know, so your cauldron is all 3 of them together, if you like, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the story of Ceridwen and Gwion reminds me of a Grimm's fairy tale about, it's called The Devil's Sooty Brother. I don't know if anybody's read that. Do you know that story, MD? It's
No,
really
I
good.
don't.
It's
I thought I knew a lot of Grimm.
and well, Robert Bly, who was the late great Robert Bly, was an American poet, and he did a lot of work in the 80s with the mythopoetic men's movement, and he used this story to talk about how the as Frederica was saying that Luna says, like, I don't know if I'm getting this right, but the first fruits of knowledge. And in this story, there's a long time ago, there's this young man who has just been released from the military. I mean, it could be anything, released from some kind of long-term commitment. And he goes, he meets a sort of a gnome under the bridge, and the gnome says, come work for me for, a million years. Could be, he says 2 or 3 years, but it could be a really long time. So that the kid goes underground and is stirring these 3 pots. And when in those pots could be, whatever, maybe the veteran is going through treatment for PTSD or something, and he's boiling these 3 cauldrons, but he's stirring them, and they're being heated by fires. And another task of this young man is to sweep all of the wood chips off the floor and put them behind the door, and those wood chips end up being gold
Yes.
when the military guy leaves, and he goes above ground with his gold. And there's a whole bunch more story, but I love that story of a person who has been through something traumatic, going below and stirring the cauldron, and then coming up with the knowledge of having been, on the hero's journey or whatever.
It's
Does that
such
make
inner
any
strength.
sense?
Yeah.
And that's
beautiful.
called The Devil's Sooty Brother?
The Devil's Sooty Brother. If you read Robert Bly's book, damn it, Oh, Iron John. It's in, I think it's in there, but that's the Devil City brother. It's great. I love that story.
It's all
Anyway.
treasures from rites of passage, isn't it? And,
Yes, it is.
that's the mystery traditions as well, I
Exactly.
guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording and you can put your microphones off. We'll do our meditation to Blackthorn.
I may not be able to stay through it all, but I'll try. Thank you.
Okay.